Hello and welcome to the Get Started webinar. I am your guide, Christopher Reddy. On the agenda for this video, we'll be covering how to create a list, which involves importing contacts, editing contacts, and even exporting them, as well as looking at our segmentation feature. We'll also be covering how to create an email campaign using the full email editor, and we'll also be editing an email and sending tests as well. Afterwards, I'll show you guys how the reporting works. Here's just a quick overview of some of the features that Campaigner has to offer. We will be touching on some of these features as well. Now, as a Campaigner subscriber, you do have access to our 24/7 customer support team. So here's some of the information here on how to reach them. All right, so let's get started. All right, so I logged into my Campaigner account, and what we're looking at here is the dashboard. So in the dashboard, this is where we can see, recently modified email campaigns, so emails that you've been working on in the past. If you have a brand new account, then this will be blank. Contact growth summary, so just how your contacts are doing over time. It's kind of like a snapshot of the last few months. And next to that is a report on your last campaign. But all of your actual campaign reporting is going to be back here under reports, email campaigns, which we will be going over on today's video. Over to the right-hand side here, we have an easy way to add contacts. So import from a file or manually enter a contact. And next to that is just an easy link to, again, create an email campaign, as well as creating a sign-up form. Creating email campaigns can also be done in the Email Campaigns tab. Creating sign-up forms can be done in the Forms tab. So really, these are just quick links to kind of get you started. Now over on the upper right-hand side, we have our little help file here. So this is a great resource if you're just trying to get some general information on the screen that you're on. And it should teach you a little bit about what to do with some features, so hopefully that'll be some help to you. Next to that, though, is our support information. So if you want to get a hold of our technical support team, you can just click that here, and all the information on how to access our support team is available here. We do also have live chat and a quick email option, so that way we can get an email from you with your account information, so we can be ready to assist you. Next to that is a little bell icon, which we call the message center. So this is where any activity that happens on your account will be recorded. So any imports and exports that you do, any campaigns that you send out, will give you some summary information there. So we will be kind of going in here when we do our imported list, as well as when we send an email campaign out today. All the way to the right is a silhouette icon. So this is your profile icon. This is where you can go and sign out, edit some account settings. So in here, this is where you can, change your password, change your date format, take a look at what your account ID would be. So if you're ever calling support, you can provide this number. You could set up your time zone here. We have every time zone available, so you just pick whatever time zone you're in, so that way your entire Campaigner account is under that time zone. Below that is your default sender email address, so the email address that you're going to use to send on behalf of. So the email campaigns that you're going to be sending, what email is it coming from? So there is an option to add multiple email addresses. I can click manage here, and this is where I can go and add in a new email address. It will send a confirmation email to the inbox of that email address, so be sure to look out for the confirmation email and then click the link to confirm. Next to that is the Users tab. So this is where you can create additional users for your team members. So more than one person can access this account at one time. As the owner of the account, you can go in and start creating users, as well as defining their roles. So Campaigner does have an email marketing role, which is an all-rounded role. They're allowed to do pretty much anything in the account except manage other users and manage billing information. Only the account owner has access to that information. There is a designer role, so someone that's going to be creating the email campaigns. Any of the template editing, media, like the assets, they'll have access to those things. They will not be able to actually schedule email campaigns. They will also not be able to see any lists or any reports. And then you can see here we got a list manager and a reporting user. So again, these are restrictive to those roles. So if I go to the roles and permissions here, you can see what's checked and what's unchecked as to what they have access to. Now let's move on to the Manage Contacts screen, where we can add some contacts to the account. So in this view, we can see how to import contacts, add new contacts, which are just one email address at a time versus importing a full spreadsheet. Next to that is an easy way to select and edit a contact, as well as add to mailing lists, unsubscribe the contact, delete it, and even export it. So let's go and import some contacts. From this view, I can drag and drop a file. It could be one of these formats, so CSV, XLS, XLSX, etc. Max file size, 500 megabytes. We can even copy and paste email addresses directly into Campaigner using this option right here. I will just go and drag a file in here for us to import. If you're ever curious about the format that you need, we do have some samples here on the right-hand side. If you want to see what my spreadsheet looks like before I import it, I have email address in the first column, and then listing down the other columns is all the other corresponding data to the email address. So that's how I'm going to get those contacts imported. I'm going to click Preview and Configure. So in this screen, this is where I'm going to map out all the fields. So from the top, it does say 9 out of 13 are already mapped. That's because Campaigner looked at the column names and mapped it to the corresponding fields. If the field does not currently exist, then we're going to highlight that here for you, and you can choose if you want to import or not. If the field that you want to import it to already exists, you can just select it in the drop down here. If it does not, you can create a new field. So the name of the field is going to be taken from your spreadsheet for the column header. You can change it if you want. Like I want to maybe put a space here between creation date. The other thing you want to make sure you specify is the type of field that it's going to be. So by default, we're saying that this is going to be a text box, but this is a calendar field. So I want to import it as a calendar type. So I've created the new field called creation date, and it's going to accept date fields or date data. And over here on the right-hand side, under Advanced Options, I can specify the actual date mask. So I do have month, day, and year, so that looks to be correct. I should be able to import that with no problem. I will not import these other fields here, so I'm going to leave it as do not import. So the next step is to assign mailing lists. So I'm going to click on that right here. I have 2 mailing lists currently in my account. So I want to add in a third one. Click Create New List. And we've selected it with the checkbox here saying that the file you're about to import is going to add those contacts into this mailing list. Now I can also add the exact same group of contacts to multiple mailing lists. If the contact already exists in any of the mailing lists on the account, we're only just simply updating the contacts association to be included into those mailing lists. So in no way are we duplicating a contact. I'm going to hit import now, and the import is now going to be queued. So depending on your list size, this could take a few minutes or a few seconds. I've just refreshed the screen here just to kind of fast track past the progress here. But if I go to the actual message in the message center, we can see here that I have added 12 new contacts to the affected mailing list. So what it's actually saying here is I did not add anybody new because they've already existed in the account. But we did update 12 contacts. And how we did that was by including an additional field that was not there before. So now the contacts are being updated. And then because I selected a new mailing list for these contacts to be associated to, we are mentioning how many of those people have been added to that list. If for whatever reason you do get a bunch of errors, we do indicate them here on the message. And if you're unsure on how to troubleshoot that, we have our customer support team information on the exact same screen. So be sure not to delete the message so we can go in and have a look and see what the errors are and help you through those errors. So let's go take a look at the affected mailing lists now. So I'm going to go to the Lists tab, Mailing Lists. And we can see here we have our new list with 12 contacts in it. And we can see the other lists that we have as well. So you'll notice we have active contacts and total contacts. So what Campaigner is referring to for active contacts is what status the contact is in currently. So what we consider active are contacts that are subscribed and soft bounced. Soft bounce, as we may know, are email addresses that did not receive the last email due to some reason. So it could be a technical reason, could also be a spam trap reason, filter reason. There's many, many different reason codes. In our reporting, we do try to indicate what those reasons are to be a soft bounce, but they're not dead contacts. They're still contacts that could start receiving emails again, in which case, if they do, their status will be put back as subscribed. For total contacts, we are looking at every status. So by clicking on the pie chart here, I can give you a breakdown. So we have subscribed and soft bounce that I mentioned as active, but hard bounce, unsubscribed, and pending are considered non-active contacts. So let's edit one of the contacts that we have. So I think this one would be good. I'm going to click on the name of that. I mentioned earlier you can just select it and hit edit, but you can also just click on the email address to go in and edit that email address. So I'm going to go change the name. And as you can see below that, I have all the custom fields that I imported. So address, city, all that is going to be here. So this is going to be a quick, easy way for you to edit what's there. I'm going to also add a birthday. Next to that, I can choose what mailing list this contact belongs to. So as we can see here, this contact is associated to 3 different mailing lists. So I'm actually only going to limit it down to 1 mailing list by unchecking these other ones. Now next to that is the Properties tab. So this is where you can see when the contact was added, how they were added, when they were last updated. You can also see the IP address of where the contact has opened or clicked an email. We can also see a date stamp of when we last sent an email to them, when they last opened an email, and also what time zone that they opened the email in. If I have a look at the History tab, I can see, generally what the history is of this contact. So they first started out being added to the newsletter mailing lists. They received an email campaign, and then they were added to these other lists. And when I save this, it's going to add also I was removed from these other lists. The last thing I want to show you is that you can also click View Activity on an email campaign. And this lets you see the activity that the contact did with the campaign. So we can see here we have view image, which means they've opened the email, and then the click through as well. So click link logo, so they clicked on the logo on the email campaign. So once you're happy with all that, you just hit save and close to actually update the contact. Now let's go create an email campaign. So I'm going to click on email campaigns, new email campaign, start new email campaign. From this screen here, we're going to select the full email editor for this experience. We do have other email builders available. We also do have an option to upload your own HTML file. So if you don't want to use an email builder, you can. You can also paste code into the editor, which allows you to take your own HTML and just paste it into the full email editor, basically. So, I mean, we will be doing a little bit of that today, but, you know, from the first screen, if you're someone who just wants to use a template, Campaigner has about 600 plus templates available to you in many different categories here on the left-hand side. We also keep a library of templates that you do create for yourself, so that way you can go to your My Templates folder and just select a template of your choosing. We also have a category for responsive design, so this is a great way for you to grab all the emails that are tested and ready for mobile responsiveness. So if I go to the Father's Day one here, you know, this is what it looks like. I can just kind of preview to see what it might look like in a smartphone device, and, you know, so that's generally what this template is going to do. All you have to do is just click on the actual template and hit next to go to the email builder. So the first thing I want to show you guys here on this screen is how to save an email. So it's just the save button over here on the left-hand side. Next to that is save as template. So this allows you to, again, save the email as a template that goes into your My Template folder. So I actually have an HTML template that I want to include here. So what I'm going to do is copy it out of my text editor here, and I'm going to hit this HTML button here on the bottom left-hand side. Don't worry if you don't have one of these templates of your own. That, again, you know, starting from your own template has the same thing, HTML, right? Where you can go, you could technically modify all the HTML that you want inside your own email template, or you can go to the design screen and modify it visually. So here's what my template's going to look like. There's going to be some changes that I have to make on this template. And I'm going to show you a couple of tools on how to do that. So the first thing that I want to change is this hello there. So hello there is too generic. I want to personalize this email. So I'm going to remove the word there, and I want to substitute it with a merge field. So I'm going to use the merge field called contact.firstname. And what that's going to do, it's going to merge in the first name of the contact. So every single contact will have their own first name, and I'm going to merge that in dynamically. So I'm going to select merge fields at the top here, and then contact.firstname. So that's what the syntax looks like. So for someone who is HTML savvy, you can simply just include this in your own HTML. You don't need to use the dropdown. If you memorize what these fields are, you can also just type it in. Again, you don't need the dropdown. What we're looking for is these square brackets, contact dot, and whatever the field name is, for us to know what to merge in. Now we do have other fields as well that you can merge. So, you know, maybe I'll put like today's date, for example, or the date in which I send the campaign. So I do have one called system.datetime that we can use. And I want to duplicate the format style, because you can see here it's black on blue. That's not going to look that great. I want white. So there's two ways I can do that. So the simplest way is to highlight it and to go over here to the foreground color and just change it to white. So that's how you change font text. Like, this should be relatively straightforward for the average user to kind of just go in and select it. Obviously, there's going to be some custom fonts that you might have brought in from other sources. Campaigner does have a limited choice here that's available from this view, but I can assure you if you do paste in your own, you can duplicate what is already there. It's just not done with this dropdown. So what I mean by that is, let's say I want to replace what this font style is. Right now it's Times Roman, which I don't want to use. For my template, I have this font style over here. That's a bit of a combination of some. So what I think I should do is highlight some text of the font that I want, and I'm going to use this copy format button. So I'll hit the drop down and say copy format. And then what I'm going to do here is select this one and then go over to apply format. And there you go. So I've duplicated exactly what I already have here. So the benefit of you knowing this is if you are grabbing a bunch of content from an external source that's littered in its own CSS or it has its own font styles and colors, ideally you want to paste that in as plain text into Campaigner, just because we're going to take exactly what you gave us, and whether the code that you're giving us behind the scenes is going to be compatible or not. You're taking a risk by sending out an email that could have some different font variations that you may have not been aware of. Someone who is with the HTML knowledge could go into the HTML and see those variations and simply modify it. For the rest of us, it's not that easy. So we recommend, if you are bringing text from external sources, to use our paste option. So you don't need to worry about like, oh, I got to go and drop it in a notepad or whatever. You can just simply paste in the text with using this paste tool right here. And with the drop down, you can either strip out the word formatting or just put as plain text, like I mentioned, or paste in just the HTML. So you have some options there. Now if I scroll down here, let's just pretend this is what I want for my general text. So again, I'm going hello, contact.firstname. I'm going to stick with the logo here. Actually, let's replace that just so I could show you what that looks like. So if I select it, I can right click, or if you're on a Mac, you can use the command key, command click. And then, you get a bunch of different edit options here. Like I can cut the picture out, I can copy it, I can edit the original picture from the source, only if the source is in Campaigner's media library. But I can also edit the HTML properties, so I can go and change what the height and width is exactly and what I want to do with the alt text and, some of the border information. But I can also just right click here and replace the image from the media library, which I'm going to show you guys. But you can also replace it from another URL source. So if you are going to your website and grabbing the logo, let's say, and you say copy image address, then I can come back in here and paste in that address, and it's going to replace the image. So I'm going to hit Control Z for undo, so I can get back to where I was at. And let's go and replace it now from the media library. So from the media library, this is where you're going to go and upload your own pictures. So I can hit upload images here to upload them. I can create my own folders, kind of take a look at the thumbnails here, just see what I have as already available images in my account. So I have the Campaigner logo here again. So I can just simply select it. It doesn't matter what view I'm selecting it in. I am flipping between the two just so you guys can see. Like you can visually kind of look at it, but you can also get some more information. If I hover over it, it'll give you like a square looking thumbnail of what that image looks like. Obviously the image is not super square. So I can right click on this entry and I can say download, I can say copy, rename it, delete it, edit the original. If I hit a copy URL, I can hit test just to see what the image is going to look like. And then that is the URL path. So if you are someone who's tech savvy with HTML, you can simply grab the URL paths and go into your own HTML offline of Campaigner and just add that in as your image sources. For everybody else, we just select it and hit insert, and then we replace it. So you'll notice it's a little crammed. We also take note of what the previous image's height and width dimensions are in the HTML. So it's a great way if you are trying to replace images exactly what was there before. The recommended way is, again, just right clicking and replacing it directly. If I were to hit the delete key to remove it, I've removed all the CSS styling around that picture as well, because we're basically removing exactly what you said to remove, everything about the picture, including the hyperlink and so forth. So by doing that, you risk having, by inserting a new image, another image size, and then you just simply have to adjust it. And, just to eliminate some of the extra work in doing that, that's why we have the right click replace option. So obviously the previous image looked way better, so I'm going to stick with that. So down here, I have a click here link. I want to make sure I have the proper link behind it. So I'm going to highlight the text for the button that I have here and hit insert. And then, yep, that's the link that I want. I want people to, when they click this link, to go to our knowledge base. And I could preview what that looks like, just so you guys can see as well that we do have an extensive knowledge base available to you, where you can search for different articles and go learn a little bit something about Campaigner, or how to set up your account and follow best practices as well. So with that being said, I think I like that it says click here in caps. I am tracking it. That's shown here. So I can uncheck that to not track it. You notice the reporting name says link is not tracked. Again, going back to those that do their own HTML, you can include this as name equals for your links to automatically have us not track it. Otherwise, you give us a name equals with a different name than this, and we'll use that as the reporting name. For everyone else, we just simply need to go into here, select it to say that we want it to be tracked, and it automatically comes up with its own reporting name. You can also adjust it. And let's hit insert. So there. So now my button is now hyperlinked, and I have the proper reporting name that I want for that email campaign. The other feature I want to show you guys here is articles. So articles is a great way for pulling in content from an external source or from a library of content outside of your email campaign. So this is very handy if you are reusing the same content repeatedly in different email campaigns, but they need to live in different areas of the email. So as an email marketer, that could be really cumbersome to having to redesign a template just to accommodate your new article content that you want to do in the different variations that you want to set up for. Another great way is utilizing our A/B split testing experiments tool, where you would pick an A/B split test on content, and rather than you having to design what the content is each time, you can just rearrange the articles that are going to be in the email campaign. So I just gave you just a few use cases as to why you would use articles. There are many, many other use cases that would be more dependable on the industry that you're in. So for me here, I want to assume this is a newsletter style email that has, hey, check out this content that I want to give you. So I'm going to replace what I have here as two article content blocks with actual article content. Before I go and do that, I'm going to hit the save button here. I'm also going to rename this email campaign. I'm going to call this my June newsletter, and hit enter to save the name of that. It says right here, change saved. And now I'm going to just head over to the articles library. So I've already predefined or created some articles. So, I'm going to dive in to show you what these articles look like. But if I'm going to create a new article, I'm just going to click new article. And what you'll notice is a very familiar design screen where it does let you, in a canvas, put whatever it is that you want. So I can go to a website here. I'll just go to Campaigners blog, for example, this article content here. I'm going to right click. I'm going to copy the image. I'll go back into the article. I'm going to right click and paste the image. Now I'm doing something super simple. For those that would rather do their own HTML, by all means, flip over to HTML and paste in your code. But for the rest of us, I think it's best that we just kind of take it slow here and just copy some text. So I'm going to use right-click, paste as plain text, because I don't want to copy over that background formatting on the text on the website. I am going to style it in just a moment, but I just want to show you guys how simple this is really going to be. So I'm just going to copy this text right here. And I'm doing it one at a time because I know that this is a header and this is a paragraph or 2 paragraphs. So I don't want to copy all of that in as one, because then it might come in as one big paragraph. I don't want that. So let's do that. All right. So I want to make this a header. I think header 3 looks nice. And I'm going to say read more at the back here. I'm going to go back to the website. I'm going to click on the actual article here. And now I have the URL for the article that I want to reference. So I have this nice article right here that talks about customer loyalty. And I want to make that part of the hyperlink for this picture here. So I'm just simply going to click on it and then hit hyperlink. Just going to paste in that URL. Again, I can go preview that to make sure I pasted it in right. I like to just uncheck and check just to see what campaigner comes up for a name. So we're going to take literally the URL and cram it all down in here. So let's just call this loyalty article instead. So that looks a lot nicer. And I'm going to do the exact same thing here for read more. I'm just going to hyperlink that, paste. And yeah, let's just call it read more article 3, insert. So that looks really simple, right? It's just some text. I didn't format the text. I may want to go back and have a look at, what the text should be formatted as. But also note, if I go to the HTML here, there is no inline CSS style that says, because I did it as plain text, what the font is supposed to be. So the benefit of me doing this on top of everything else is that if I picked a template that Campaigner has or a template that I've designed myself, it would inherit what the style sheet is for the email campaign if there is nothing being defined. So, not getting too technical with you. Basically, if there is no reference to what the text should look like, then it's going to look for what the text should be from your email design that you've created. So I want to move on here and just put in the name of the article to match so I know that this article is this. Now, I also wanted to highlight that I can use a from URL. So if I wanted to populate, let's say, everything on this page, I could grab the URL and make that the article content. Now, the only thing you just need to keep in mind is if you select a content article on your website that contains various other links and ads and JavaScript and XML and all this other stuff, that we may not be able to accept that as HTML content. So those that would be doing that would have a design team that would be creating their own web pages for this in mind. Or some global CDN service that has the content listed somewhere else, like Publish This, where you can go and grab the URL and then just use the content, directly. So if I go from URL, I just throw in the URL, and then I can preview the content in the email campaign. So I'm going to hit Save and Close because I'm done with this content design. I'm just going to close these other tabs here I have at the top. Now I'm going to go to email campaigns again. I'm going to click on the name of the campaign so I can pull it up. Thumbnail here is just loading. I have 2 links tracked so far. There's the email content. So if I want to edit the email content again, I can go and hit edit up here, or I can go over to the thumbnail, preview the content, and hit edit. So I'm going to hit edit to get back in. So there's everything that I had previously before. So now let's go and add article content. So I'm just going to go here and delete using backspace. I'm going to use the same area block though, and I'm going to go select article, and the articles I built are right here. So let's go build trust to avoid spam folder. So you can see the syntax here is a squiggly bracket with a squiggly line, article, what the article is called, and the ID of the article. So when you're starting to use some more advanced features of Campaigner like dynamic content or even conditional content, I can minimize how much content is inside the email campaign in view. So it makes it easier for me to pick and choose what the content is going to look like. So we're not going to get into that today's video because I think it deserves its own in-depth dive rather than me kind of giving you a high level of that. But let's go and select this other article. Let's use another feature here. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say insert row below. So I'm basically duplicating an additional row because I want to include that third article that I just made. Done. And you'll notice too, if I right click, there are many other like insert columns to the left, to the right. So you can kind of expand the HTML tables of what you designed, as well as deleting stuff. And you can also edit some of the CSS for that as well. Just going to kind of just let you see what's available. You can even change the general layout here. Add some accessibility content. Yeah. All right. So you guys don't know what this is going to look like. I'm not even sure if I did this one the same as I did the other one. So let's preview and test to make sure that I have my content down pat. So if I scroll a little bit down to the bottom left-hand side, I have a preview and test button here, as well as a quick test button. At the very top of the screen here on the right-hand side, I have a preview and test button. So the difference between preview and test and quick test is a quick test just lets you send the email to yourself so you can go see what it looks like. Preview and test actually takes you to a preview screen so you can see what it looks like on the browser's perspective. This doesn't necessarily mean this is exactly how it's going to look like in every email client. If you are looking for a way to test that with every other email client, you can get a third-party app such as Litmus or something else. There's also Email on Acid, which is a little bit cheaper. You could go and use one of those services. They provide an email address that you can include in here and send a test to those testing services so you can take a look at what the email is going to look like amongst many other different devices. In Campaigner, you can at least see if it's going to be mobile responsive, which it looks like it is, and the contents are showing up nicely here. So you can see here, I can tell that I did not do a center align like I did for these article content with the header and the image. This one here, it is left align, and I'm just kind of like highlighting just so I can see the structure. So, you know, if I wanted to change the way this is viewed, I would just go back to the article and, you know, even if I schedule this campaign an hour from now and I notice that mistake, I can just modify the article before the send and it will update the content before it goes out. That's, again, another reason why you'd probably want to use articles, because even if you have 15 different campaigns and you're like, oh no, I got to go edit the content for all 15 campaigns. Well, if you have that as an article, you can just edit the article content and it will dynamically update for those campaigns. Now, what it won't do is if the campaign was already sent with that content the way it is, it's not going to magically update the content in Buddy's inbox. So, that's also a good thing to note as well, that if you had, let's say, a recurring campaign that goes out every day, sends different article content blocks out, you don't never need to stop the campaign to edit the content. You can just simply update the article content before the campaign sends, so that way the content's always fresh and you're providing your own dynamicness of your own content. And that's where that URL option will come in handy. So to kind of scale this all the way up with your business, you could just go edit your content on WordPress, let's say, and it will just feed into your campaigns that you're sending automatically in Campaigner. So, step one is to do it manually yourself so you understand what you're doing, what you're sending, and all that fun stuff. Step two is to start making your work a little bit easier, where you're having your content in different sources. And obviously, the last step is to completely automate the entire thing. So all you really need to do is have a content creator on your side that just updates some articles and it feeds into emails. In addition to article features, we do have RSS feeds as well. So if your website still uses RSS, which a lot do, We also have a similar feature where you just throw in the syntax, tell us how many articles you want to display from your site, and then we'll just populate the article content as shown here. So taking a look at merge fields, I did notice that the date has displayed correctly here. We do have some various different ways of actually changing the way the date is formatted. So take a look at our knowledge base on exactly how to do that. Otherwise, you can reach out to our 24/7 support team that can give you some insight as to how you can modify the merge field to display the date differently. I'm not going to show that here on today's demo because it's going to take up quite a bit of time showing you all the different ways of doing that, because there's a lot of different ways of doing it. The other thing I want to show you again, there's my name, so that's shown up perfectly here. I can click on the links here to see where they go. So there's our knowledge base that I just mentioned. And then here's the article content. So I made read more as well as this. So that should take me to the actual content. Fantastic. So I think my email is pretty much ready to go. I mean, aside from me having some bogus Lori Ipsum text here, maybe I can replace that with something on my side, just for fun. No, that's too many bullets. Too many bullets. I'm not going to worry too much about that, I think. This is just going to a test list on my side, which is something you can also do here on the preview screen. So rather than me, broadcasting this out to see how it looks and hope for the best, just to reiterate, you can send it to your test contact on your account. So this being my first email address I added on the account, that becomes my default test contact. But I can also assign other contacts as test contacts, which is just below the email address field in the edit test contact screen. But even if you don't have the contact on your account, you can just go in and add in your email address. I'm going to hit comma to go and add in another one, and then hit enter to finish. Then I can hit send test, and then it's going to send my email campaign out to these email addresses where I can go and have a look at what it looks like. We also have a check email feature here. So if I hit check email, this just kind of has a quick look at, if there's anything obvious in the campaign as well as your account that could prevent you from sending an email campaign. This does not say that because you have this, that we're not going to send the email. This is just letting me know that, a subscription management link will also be included in the footer. So I have like an additional unsubscribe link in the email campaign. It's just letting me know that there's going to be 2 now, because we also include in your content an unsubscribe footer. So I have right here, if you want to unsubscribe, click here, and then Campaigner also substitutes and includes its own footer. So for those that don't have access to our client success team, you're not going to be able to remove the unsubscribe footer. You can request from support to modify it ever so slightly, which would need to be approved by our postmaster team to make sure it follows CAN-SPAN and CASL and GDPR policies, obviously. For those that have access to client success, you would be able to request to have our footers removed if you, take some responsibility on the unsubscribe messaging. You could, of course, use Campaigners unsubscribe links in your own email content versus having it down here in a secondary footer. So I'll demonstrate, an example of what that looks like when I send this out, because I don't want to include this information as well as this information in my campaign, but this is always good to include it by default if you're not sure if you're compliant, if you're not sure if you're meeting all the guidelines. Campaigner does set you up to make sure that you are including those best practices. So I'm going to close the preview to go back to the email design screen. I think I'm happy with generally what I've shown you guys, as well as what I can do in the email campaign. So I will move to the next step here. I also want to just highlight there is a plain text email builder available here. So if I click on that, I can hit insert text from HTML. Now I have plain text here. It's going to populate the plain text for the articles as well. So should be good there. So now let's throw in a subject line. So let's call this our newsletter is here. I'm going to use merge fields to drop in my name or the name of the contact, sorry. Whoops. Now, I just kind of made up a random subject line. I'm sure some of you guys are not sure, is this really the subject line I should be sending? So I wanted to just highlight a key feature on Campaigner called Experiments, which is our robust A/B split testing tool. Basically, it's going to allow you to do an A/B split test on the fly from this screen right here. So, if I wasn't really overly excited about what I put up here, I can go and create other variations as well. And then I can send this out as an experiment to see which subject line performs the best. So then I know for the actual campaign that I want to send to the remainder segment, the best subject line basically. So let's demonstrate that before I send out this email campaign. So I'll just leave this here for now. I just wanted to highlight some of these other areas just below before I move on to that piece. So just below that is pre-header. So this is the teaser content after the subject line, which I think Gmail and Hotmail has primarily. I'm sure others are catching on. So this is an optional piece of text. Those that code their own HTML, I know you guys would hide that text or include some blurb text before everything else in the HTML email because that's what the pre-header is. What this is doing is basically allowing you to include whatever it is you want as your own design content for those that know HTML or not. And then you're having us inject a pre-header into the email campaign in the appropriate spot to be a pre-header. So that way it gets picked up by Gmail and the other ISPs that use this feature. And then you can also A/B split test that as well if you are struggling to find which pre-header is best. Below that is from name. So this is just the friendly name of the email campaign. Again, you can also experiment on that. From email address, so what email address you want to use to send on behalf of. So as I mentioned before, you can go and manage your own email addresses on the silhouette icon up here if you want to add in other email addresses, so you can use it as a drop-down. With that being said, I can also change what the reply to email address is, so it doesn't necessarily have to be the same as the from email address. I simply just need to uncheck that and then just select the alternate email address that it's supposed to be. Below that is if I want an auto reply message for those that do reply, if I want to track replies or not, if it's imperative to your business to receive replies, I recommend you do not track it, just because that we do apply our own tracking code onto the replies, that we found that it sometimes discourages some recipients from actually replying because they don't understand the reply to recipient address. So if it's critical to your business, do not track it. If you just simply would like to know how much replies you get from a send, then you can go ahead and use that. Campaigner does try to filter out a lot of the auto replies that happen, but some do manage to escape our grasp and may flood your inbox. So just keep that in mind. And again, that's why we have a reply to alteration that you can do as well. So the replies can go somewhere else. You want to make sure, though, that you are monitoring the inbox of the reply to address. So that way, if there is a reply from someone asking to be unsubscribed, that you are honoring that. So keep that in mind when you are changing those settings. The next thing I want to show you is the footer. So like I mentioned, let's say if your email design content already has a physical address information, then I don't need Campaigner to duplicate that here. Or if I'm not happy with the formatting, I can try to change the formatting a little bit. But it is plain text, so there's not a whole lot you can do there. I could just uncheck it though, and then actually go include that content in my own HTML. This is the unsubscribe footer that I mentioned before. So with client success, you can ask or request additional unsubscribe footers, and then you just simply need to select the one that you want to use. For those that have opted in to have a blank one, there'll be a blank one that you can select. So that way we don't send two footers. Next, you can pick what the subscription management form is going to be. So what people can update their preferences for, what the unsubscribe message looks like when they choose to unsubscribe. All that's done on the Forms tab under Subscription. There is a extensive help article on our knowledge base that should be able to assist you with that as well. Below that is where I want the Read It Online link to be displayed. So this means it's enabled. This is the text in which I want it to display. The Read It Online is the link. And then if I want to display that link at the top of the email or at the bottom of the email campaign. Next is encoding. So UTF-8 is default. If you send emails in different languages, know that we do have other encoding types. If your encoding is not listed here, you can definitely include it in the head tag of your own HTML. There's no issue there. This is just a convenience sake for those that don't know what this is. We're automatically encoding everything to the proper encoding type. There's some social sharing options that allow the recipient to share the content to their social sites that they're connected to. And then this right here allows you to share your content yourself on your own pages that you have for your business, so people get the exact same content on those social sites as well. If I want to preview what this may look like for those that share it amongst themselves, it'll have the actual information here for the recipient, but I can go here, like this is just a preview. I can go here and just, share on all these sites and like it on Facebook and all that stuff. Now, those that have Google Analytics, if you would like us to automatically track everything for you in Google Analytics, you simply just need to check this box here and we'll automatically apply Google Analytics tracking that you specify here into the link encoding. So the UTM source is the source of the session that's being generated in Google Analytics. So email marketing is default. This helps you separate web traffic to email marketing traffic on your Google Analytics side. That tracking is going to send itself over into your Google Analytics account. This does not do anything additional in campaigners reporting. Having said that, even though you've selected either custom tracking, which lets you use other third-party vendor tracking services or proprietary ones that you set up, where you can set your own key and values up. But for Google Analytics' sake, we're still tracking everything in campaign reporting. Just now you're getting additional tracking on your ROI and everything else on the Google Analytics side. For those that have Adobe Analytics, you can also enable that. That requires some integration setup, because Adobe requires a token. And it's going to do something similar to Google Analytics in terms of the reporting that you're going to get. So I do not want to track anything on this campaign because that would muck up the company's Google Analytics tracking for this campaign, in particular for me, being that the links that I have listed are campaigner.com domains. So if I go over here to the bottom right-hand side, I can hit Save Draft. And now the campaign is ready for me to do the next step. So before I do anything, I should make sure I test the email campaign again. Always, always test. Test at least 3 times. Why? Just because. It's safe that way. I'll just throw in my email addresses. You could also include a personal message going, this is test 2. So if you are sending it to some of your colleagues, when they receive it, they're not like, what's this? You can tell them, within the actual test that this is just a test. Let me know what you think, kind of thing, right? Again, you also have the option to send it to all your test contacts as well. Perfect. So let's make an assumption that I checked my inbox and everything looks great. Let's now select the recipients I want to send it to. So I'm going to hit select recipients, and it's going to pull up all my lists. So let's go and select newsletter, because that's what that is. And we also have exclusion lists, so I could exclude a mailing list. Being that every list has nearly every single contact, I'm not going to do it this time around, but just so you guys know, you can just hit exclusion and then pick the list or multiple lists or segments that you want to exclude from the total. So if the same contact belongs in the recipient list that you're selecting and you've also selected them as exclusion, then that contact will be removed from the email campaign. So let's just do that and just see what my total count is going to be. It says 12, but let's refresh. It says 0. That's because one of these segments includes everybody in the mailing list here. So this is what I was afraid of in my example, that I have the same contacts everywhere. So I do not want to exclude anybody in my send. There we go. So you don't have to refresh. I like to do it just to make sure. If I want to see who these people are, if it's been a while that you've imported to the list, I can just click on the name of the list and it'll just show me everybody in it. So I can just see, again, it tells you right here what I'm looking at. To get back to the campaign, I just go to email campaigns again. There's the campaign. You'll notice too that the status was updated to draft now instead of incomplete. We also have a recipient list selected, and we also indicating it's not scheduled and it was not sent. And I last updated it about a minute ago, which is all true. So now I think I'm ready to send it. So I can hit this last action here on the right-hand side, which, you know, when it does send, will tell you the report. If it's none of these steps, it'll just give you an edit option. But if I do schedule and send, I can now pick when I want to send it out, how often I want to send it. So you can do a recurring send, so daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or annually. So that's literally when it's going to send on this day, next day, on this day next week, etc., etc. I can say when I would like it to start and when I would like it to stop. And you have some different stop options, like after this number of times, rather than you finding out that exact date. Or just say never, and then whenever you decide to come back and stop it, you can just simply stop scheduling it. For my send here, I think this is a one-time newsletter that I want to do. But again, just giving you that use case again about articles, I can just do recurring now, never stop. And I just need to make sure by, the time that I'm in right now, let's say it's 5:00 p.m. and I have this scheduled. That means tomorrow I have until 5 p.m. to update the content for the next one that goes out. So really all the steps in Campaigner involves you just simply ensuring your list is up to date and your campaign content is up to date. That's how easy it is to kind of get things done. Now, the other thing you can do as well is include other people to get notifications on this send. So by default, it's going to notify the primary email address on the account. So, I don't want that. I want to include, my real email address. That one's actually a fake one. And you can include, I think, up to 5 other contacts as well, which should be more than enough for any organization. Use like a catch-all inbox if you have a lot of people you want to include on that. So let's schedule and send. So now the campaign is in scheduled status. So we just need to wait. We don't usually take too long to send. I think it's anywhere between 30 seconds to 2 minutes. If you are sending to a list that's greater than, I don't know, let's say 250,000 contacts, then expect maybe like 5 or 10 minutes more on the wait time for that. While we wait for this to actually send out, I can also take you to the campaign report now, seeing that I've already sent a campaign out the other day. So view report. I don't really have a lot of stats here to show you for this one. So let me go to campaign report here and take a look at the 2 I did send and then expand them all so I can see all the different campaign reports. And I can see my first campaign obviously had way more activity than the other one. So I think I'm going to show you guys what that looks like here. So I'm going to click on the campaign name. So now we have campaign name, my first campaign. So, here are the unique contact summary data here. Unique deliverability data here. So this lets you know how many you sent, how much was delivered, what the bounce rate is, what exactly the bounce was. I can see on the right-hand side here, mobile versus desktop. So just how many people opened it on mobile device versus the desktop device. which comes in handy if you're not doing mobile responsive emails. If you send your first campaign and you notice that 60 or 50% of your recipient list is on mobile, then you might want to consider redoing your content so the message is very clean and convenient for your recipients. So that way they enjoy opening and reading your emails. If you neglect that, then over time you'll start noticing your open rates will start declining, especially that if the majority of your recipient list is looking at it in mobile and you're not accommodating for that environment. But here open rate is 7, so let's click on that and see who they are. So I can see exactly who they are, the email address, the name of the person, the last time they've opened it, and the total number of times that they've opened it. I can even decouple group by contact here to see group by device. So we don't list out every single device, even though we do recognize all the devices out there. For those that have API access, you should be able to grab some additional device data. But below this here, you can see mobile, desktop. Now let's go over to click-throughs. So this is where reporting name comes in handy. This tells you what the link name is and then what the URL is for that campaign. And then you can see unique clicks here. So I can go and drill down to who those unique clickers are, the last time they've clicked, and the total number of times that they clicked. Now, depending on the report that I pick, I can export out that specific report. I can also go save as segment, so I can go do something additional. So let's say I want to email these people specifically that clicked here for a follow-up email campaign that basically says like, thanks for your interest. Here's our phone number if you wish to learn more and talk to like somebody on our side a little bit more about that article or that content, right? So, in additional to that, like maybe I want to send that follow-up to those that did not click. So, let's get into this as well. There's lots to show, but here's our heat map. See where people are generally clicking on the email campaign. 60% of my clickers are on here, right? Subscribes, replies, unsubscribes, complaints. Any spam complaints? Nope, none. Email delivery. So who I delivered to is listed here. You can take a look at the geolocation. Generally, where are they opening the email? So which top countries will show up here. Here's like the full list of where everybody's opening and clicking from. And this information can be used in segmentation as well. Now that I have collected some information about where they opened and clicked emails, I can then filter that for the next send to say like, find everybody that is in California or Ontario, Canada, and send out this newsletter. Okay, so I did promise you to show the A/B split testing tool as well as segmentation. So why don't we do both? So, I have who I have for opens, but, that's not everybody that opened this campaign. So why don't I just do save a segment to go to the segment tool. So this is where you can go, again, to build your own list criteria. So this is just an easy way for you to say, like, find all the people who, received a particular campaign that is from a different demographic in a certain list. There's a lot of different things you can add in here. So, like, for example, find everybody who got my first campaign who did not open at any time. So I want to know who those people are. So let's go and refresh that just to see what the result is for that. So there's about 6 people that didn't open. Now let's also include maybe, just so you guys can see some of the options here, and I want to find everybody that, let's go look at, there's a creation date, birthday, there's the geolocation fields here. So let's say GeoCity contains Ottawa. And then let's filter that and just see what we get. Zero. Okay, so there's probably another city listed for that. Let's see here. I mean, there's the other geo fields here. I mean, I could also do this. I can go to location, and then I can just put in Ottawa, Ontario, view map, and then I can just kind of see, okay, so the Google Maps just kind of doing this. So Ottawa's actually this big. So I could do something like that. And let's see if, so it's like 34-mile radius. I could switch that to kilometers if I want. Okay, so I guess people opened near Ottawa, but not out, like not directly in. So I mean, I could keep going and going, but this is where you can kind of pick the zone radius. You could also select the postal codes or zip codes. You can add many, or you can use the map. So you can go in and say like K2M. Let's add that. Let's add like I don't know K2J. Let's add that, and you're seeing here that it starts highlighting those areas. So let's do like 90210. Let's add that. So I'm sure I need to zoom out all the way to California, and there's going to be this, you can see it already. There's like a little random zone selected. Really, really, really small. There you go. I believe we support up to 1,500 zones here that you can input, so you can grab a bunch. The other option too was to kind of select on the map all of the zip codes. So if you don't even know the zip codes and you want to select a bunch of area, like a radius, we'll record what the zip codes are as well. So you can even use custom zip codes. So if you've already recorded that information in your own custom fields, you can just say, hey, actually, could you reference the zip code that I've already added? In my case, I called it postal code. And if I do that, then it's going to use whatever that information is. Yeah, so that's just letting me switch it, and then I can go view it and all that stuff. So this is what you do if you are trying to segment your list a bit more. And what's good about campaigner segmentation is that this right here is dynamic. So as more and more people, like this wouldn't be a great example, but like if I had a field here for when they last ordered something, and I'm saying find everybody who's ordered something today. This would be relative to today, right? So tomorrow, if I check the segment again, it's going to look at who has last ordered today. It's not going to include yesterday because that's not what I'm asking. But if I want to include yesterday, I could say is before today. Which would pick everything before today, but I can also say in the last, 2 days or 1 day, or weeks or hours or whatever that you need, right? So there's, as you can see here, there's quite a bit of different ways to segment either your fields. I can add in multiple filters and operators here, so I can make some very complex queries if I'd like. I can also reference other mailing lists and segments. So if I've already defined who everybody is, that where their favorite color is red, I don't necessarily need to specify that in the next segment I build. I can just simply go here and select that segment or list and include that into my next logic. Okay, so that's generally what segments is. Like if I go to next here, I can give it a name. I can specify if I want it dynamic or static. Static just means it's set in stone. It means we're not going to update the list after you create it. You're basically locking in everyone that met the criteria for that segment, so it's frozen in time. Okay, so let's go run an experiment here. So I did actually send it out anyway, but let's copy it and go to the copy. I'm going to go edit details. And then I'm back to the screen again where I can go and select my subject line variations. Now I don't need to do it here per se. I could just go directly into the experiments tool and then just select which campaign I want to copy. Really is up to you. If you're really, really familiar with the email campaigns tab versus the experiments tab, then this is how you would kind of easily do it. Now I am checkboxing this down here that says leave a copy of this campaign. The reason why I do this by default, I'm just like creature of habit, I just go and do that anyway, is because if I don't do that and I run this as an experiment, what Campaigner is actually doing, because you're telling us, is to make this into an experiment. So it converts the campaign into an experiment. So it will now live in the experiments tab and it cannot be used as a campaign. So, to me, that's a little bit of an inconvenience if I decide later on to bail out of my experiment idea. Like just for last minute, my boss says, you know what, we'll do this next month. I didn't want to be stuck having to go, oh, I need to recreate the campaign. So, I just select this so it leaves a copy. So I can go and decide if I want to do experiment or not. Either way, there's always going to be a copy in the email campaigns tab for me to go and select. So that's why I'm doing that. But here I am about to do an experiment. So subject, pre-header, from name, from email, and design, as I mentioned before. So I did select subject line when I started this experiment. Now Campaigner provides a B, and C split to kind of get you going. I believe you can add over 50 different variations if you'd like. If you want to do a true A and B split, I can just simply remove the additional variation that Campaigner kind of provides by just hitting the X here. If I want to add an additional variation, I can just hit add a variation. If I want to edit the campaign content because I would have copied it from something, I can hit the pencil icon next to the campaign. Variation B is simply going to be whatever variation A is. The only difference here is if I use design, I'm actually creating different design content for each variation because that's what the experiment is looking at, is a different design. So if you're doing some rebranding or you're using that article example I mentioned earlier where you're switching around the articles to see which one's going to perform better, then that's what you can do. But I'm going to do this one here. So I'm just going to cut out all the extra fluff that I put into that one and just say our newsletter is here. And I'm going to select all my contacts given that I only have a few. I highly recommend if you're going to do an experiment to try to have a sample size of at least 1,200 contacts. And I say that, as 1,200 as a rule of thumb, not because it's a lot of contacts or anything, but you don't want to have like a very, very close split where it's like, one experiment, 1 by 2 contacts. That variation 1 by 2 contacts. That doesn't really help you, right? That doesn't help anybody. But what you would have to run another experiment or you kind of wasted your time. But, the more contacts you select, the more information you're collecting and the more meaningful the reporting is going to be for you. And I find around 2,500 contacts is the safest area because it gives you just enough and you're not sending too much, right? But if I go to step 2 here, again, this is where you select your contacts, whether it's multiple lists or segments, exclusion lists, etc. And then I can use the slider here to kind of see how many people in the test group are going to get the variation. So the 40% here are going to get the 2 variations. And the 60% here are the remainder contacts. They're going to get the winner segment. What determines that is what's laid out in step 3. So how long I want the experiment to run before I determine the winner, and what metric am I using to justify which is the winner and which is not. So unique opens, unique clicks, total clicks, or unique clicks on a specific link. I think there was, right here is the plain text that I included in that campaign. So that's why it's showing up here twice. I just wanted to double check that. So for subject line testing, I recommend unique opens because it's generally why you would do a subject line testing is see which one captivates the audience more than the other. And in order to know that is by opens, right? Like more people were more engaged with it than others. If you're looking at some more revenue seeking or article content seeking, then I would do, did this one perform better? So unique opens, save and close. I can give the experiment a name. I can add a description to it if I want to, let my whole team know why I did this experiment. But I can schedule it whenever. And then after 12 hours, what do you want us to do? So automatically send the winner to the remaining recipients is probably the most automated, cleanest, carefree way of just ensuring that the remainder gets the winner. But if you're someone like me that wants to review the stats first, which is why I was able to come up with the whole concept of 2,500 contacts, because I've noticed that when you have a little bit more than that, it becomes more meaningful. And the only way I would know that is if I look at the stats first before I send the winner. So we have that option here where you can say notify me and I will manually send out the winner. So what's still convenient about this feature as well is that we will design the campaign winner as well as the segment automatically for you. All you have to do is review the report and click a button that says send the winner if you are satisfied with the results. If you're not satisfied with the results, simply do not click anything and just leave it alone. And go send another one or go send a regular campaign. Or maybe this A/B split test was just to help you figure out what you should do with a different campaign, with a different target audience or something like that. So, again, this is really a very powerful tool that will allow you to do something very complicated in the simplest manner, where you can visibly see some engagement. So, on average, you could expect maybe a 1% to up to, I think, like 5 or 10% open rate increase, depending on the subject line variation testing that you're doing, or the branding content variation that you're doing, and the target panel audience that you are using. Obviously, you want to maybe segment, your active subscribers that are in the list to get the A/B split test, so you maximize the chances that it'll be inboxed to start, and then from there, even though that it's been inboxed, how many people actually engage the email, versus you just blindly sending it to your entire list and hoping that a lot of people are going to open and click on it. So in this video, we showed how to set up your account, add users, upload the mailing lists, modify some of the contacts, send out an email campaign. Showed you briefly how to create your own segments as well as your own experiments, and view the reporting analytics. So I'd like to thank you for your time in watching this video. I hope it was very helpful. Again, my name is Christopher Reddy. If you have some additional questions about Campaigner, or you need some assistance with your account perhaps, you can always reach out to hello@campaigner.com. And if you're ready to get started with Campaigner, you can just give us a call at 1-866-358-6355. Or again, you can reach us at hello@campaigner.com. Thank you again, and have yourself a great day.